everyone, this is Chris, and you're listening to One Cross Radio, or watching on YouTube, and today we are rejoined by Willaim Albert. Will, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
Doing alright, you got a Christmas tree behind you.
I know, I love it.
Oh yeah, Jill and I are excited. I was saying to Will, and I don't know why I'm going to share now, but it was funny for me, when I was editing our last part one, I found when I typed William, I was good. It was Willaim Albert. But as soon as I started typing Will, it automatically became Arnett. I had to edit it like 3 times. And I'm just like, oh man, don't publish it with Will Arnett. Don't publish. I think we even joked about that.
We might have, yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So today we are kind of finishing our last round, because normally there's a couple other questions, but due to time constraints we just didn't get to them. So thank you for coming back before we do dinner. Oh shoot, I can't remember how long the chicken's been in. Let's say you got here like 10 minutes ago?
Yeah.
Alright, so it's been in about 10 minutes. Alright, it'll be fine. So because we're professionals and ready. Oh my gosh, I had it ready, open, and it's gone. Wow. Yeah, seriously, wow. So, Will, my good man, last time where we ended off, we were talking about some of the differences in the church culture between Canada and the U.S.
Yeah.
What do you feel is a difficulty faced by the church today?
I think I've thought a lot about this, and I've also talked a lot about this with people that I know. And I mean, my frame of reference is going to be tailored more towards a Western perspective as versus different parts of the world. But to answer your question more directly, probably some things that I find difficult in the West, especially with the church, is just kind of how we have so much in our culture that praises like autonomy, consumerism, self-sufficiency, kind of this business model of like success and just becoming successful and wealthy. And while those may be good things, those aren't inherently bad things in and of themselves. It's more so the desire behind those things, and it more so becomes a problem when you look at what Christ calls us to, and a lot of those principles are actually counter what Christ preaches as far as like
we wouldn't find Jesus on the cover of Fortune 500,
right? and also just I mean, there's a lot of things that Jesus kind of teaches against that our culture praises, and so they're kind of in constant tension. It's kind of the greatest commandment is love your God, and then love your neighbor as yourself. But I mean, we live in such an autonomous culture where like I can't think of too many neighbors that get together on a regular basis. In our modern world, it's kind it's kind of closed doors after you get home from work, and you kind of stay indoors. You may say a hi and bye as you pass by, but you wouldn't get together and gather and sit down, and so just kind of this individualistic lifestyle. It's so I think breaking the mold with that, and breaking the I guess what culture praises as kind of success, or what culture values, kind of redefining that with a biblical worldview and a biblical framework. I think that's a challenge for us in the West, for sure. Yeah.
And I found it interesting as you're talking about the neighbor thing, because like the blessing, and you could debate curse of the internet and the advancement of some phones, where phones aren't phones anymore, they're like mini computers.
Right.
I do miss having just a phone.
Right.
Although then I wouldn't be able to watch Netflix on the way to the Power Rangers on the way to work. So but yeah, you're right, where your next door neighbors you say hi and bye to, where neighbor is now your friend who you chat with online, or your old friends from Toronto or the States or whatever. Yeah. And that's who you treat the most neighborly, but they're not in your immediate area, and that's something.
Yeah, it's interesting how technology has bridged the gap. So we're able to communicate with people in various different parts of the world, which is actually an amazing thing.
Yeah.
But then it also removes that human connection, that face-to-face connection.
Yeah.
Which maybe I think is a little bit more at what Christ is getting at when, he speaks into some of these issues. It's more in a context of entering people's homes, entering people's lives, being a part of their everyday life, as opposed to maybe just talking to them behind a computer.
Yeah.
As good as many benefits as that provides, I think there is still a disconnect there.
Well, it's almost like when the church take care of my people, spread the word amongst the nations, where it's all this money to missions, and missions are great, but then what about the immediate neighborhood? Like, thankfully I'm noticing more and more, and St. Clair's does a great job of that, whereas it's a both and. It's not either or, but at other times churches have made it an either or, where it's like, well, the word mission, so we're going. It's like, yeah, but y'all know you got a lot of homeless people in this neighborhood, right? Like,
I agree. I think it's a both and. I think it's understanding that missions can happen essentially anywhere, right? Like when we look at the Great Commission that Jesus says, he says, go and make disciples of all nations to the end of the earth, to Judea, Samaria, right? So to all the different places that would have been far. But when you look at the original language, the verb make disciples is actually the command. So Jesus calls us to make disciples first, which is the priority. And I'm not saying that to discredit traveling overseas or missions, because I see that as a very important part of the Great Commission. But the emphasis that I notice in the Greek is making disciples, and that should be our priority. So if you feel the sense that you need to make disciples overseas, then that's what you should do. But also, if you feel that you need to make disciples right in your local neighborhood, you need to do that also. I think it's like you said, it's a both and. It's making sure the gospel is proclaimed throughout the whole world, not just near, not just far, but near and far.
Yeah. Sorry, as you said near and far, I'm like, and wherever you are, my heart will go on, because that song's awesome. Yes. All the sidetracks, sir. So my next question for you, my good man, is what has been your biggest struggle as a person in church ministry?
Where do I begin? No, I'm just kidding. I think...
Hey, you didn't answer them flawless, otherwise I was like, that's the problem.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I'm personally wrestling with now is, and this is something we've been talking about in a group that that I've been attending at St. Clair called Huddles, where they're kind of a little bit more intentional discipleship training. And it's funny because whenever you step into ministry and into roles that require you to take on more responsibility, you can feel your insecurities being challenged or things or areas where you feel unconfident. And so I think in that sense, that can be a major challenge, because it can be easy to shy away from those things. Yeah. Especially when, you're trying to grow and you're trying to step into who you're meant to be, who you're called to be, where you feel like God has gifted you and growing in those giftings. I feel like that can be very uncomfortable if you're not really secure in your identity, right? Because a lot of that, I feel like, is tied to your identity, your self-worth, your value. So if you feel like you're not doing a good job, you feel like you're a bad person, or you're a bad Christian, or you're a bad... And it can become very much like, self-loathing, self-deprecating, and it's easy to kind of get on that mindset. So kind of just reminding yourself that the Lord does the work through you, and you are the vessel, and you still prepare, and you still try your very hardest, but it also takes the pressure off knowing that God does the work for you, and it's not up to you to be perfect in order for his gospel to be proclaimed and the good news to be spread. Because if it was about being perfect, then none of us would have a chance, right? So
well, and then with that, it also when you're getting defensive and it's all tied into that, it starts to become about the show, right?
Right, exactly.
Like it's not about your walk suffers because you're like, I gotta put on this suit or whatever of like, I look like I have everything together and that I have all the answers. All that, where this, I think Matt and I talked about this when he was on last year, where it's almost like the superstar pastor.
Yeah.
Almost where it's like, well, they're perfect and X, Y, and Z. Yet, like, yes, you're in ministry, you're called to a higher standard, but that doesn't mean absolute perfection because you're not hitting that. None of us are going to hit that.
Yeah.
So I hope that can be something that changes, where it's like we can be more vulnerable with each other, especially pastors.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also ultimately it comes down to this is something I've thought a lot about, but our definition of success, right?
Yeah.
Like, is success for us gaining a massive church so that we can become the leader of this thing that we can then turn and say, look at what I've done, look at what I've built. I've got over 1,000 people coming to my church on Sunday, and like, just is it about that, or is it about the condition of your heart, serving with the gifts that God has given you, and not focusing solely on numbers and how many people attend, because I think identity can also be very easily tied to how we view success, and this just comes full circle back to the business economy model that we've kind of adopted in the church, as far as like, okay, well, if we're not growing, then something must be wrong. Like we must be doing something wrong. And while growth is a good thing,
absolutely,
I don't necessarily know if that definition is all encompassing, because there can be a point where your church will stop growing, your congregation will stop growing. It may have reached its capacity, or what it can handle. And then if you have that framework or that lens of always looking at it from a numbers perspective, you're going to beat yourself up over the fact that it's not growing, it's not advancing, it's not
when it's also just about numbers, like, I think between the both of us, we could name a bunch of churches from a number of denominations with questionable teachings,
right,
that have incredibly high numbers, and that's bad. But then if it's from a numbers perspective, it's like, well, they're doing something right, let's copy that. Or no. Yeah, the business model, it's weird.
I mean, it's also interesting too, thinking about just all of this discussion is very relevant to what I've been thinking about a lot lately, but comparison too, even like being able to look at somebody else's congregation and be like, man, they've got X, Y, and Z, so we're just going to take that, copy and paste it, and hope that it works for us. And I think while I understand why someone wanted to do that, I think the problem with doing that is not understanding fully why they did it. So just copying and pasting it isn't necessarily going to give you the same results. On paper it may look the same, but you may not understand why they're doing it. And I think it's important, especially to a denomination or to a congregation, to explain to them the importance of why things are done and the reasoning behind why things are done. Because I think then people get a broader sense of not only who you are, but who you like, what you stand for, and what the church stands for, why things are done, and what that has to do with Christ and how he has affected our lives. A very simple example would be explaining communion and why do we take communion. That's a very simple example of, just letting people know what it represents and why it's significant, and why we participate with communion on a Sunday. Why it's a sacrament, and why we view it as important. I think explaining those things often helps make things less confusing and also enriches people's understanding of Christ.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I like that you said the don't copy and paste thing. And the reason I was chuckling was I immediately thought of a clip on YouTube, which if I can find it, I'll attach to this, where Matt Chandler was speaking to someone. He's like, Driscoll burst on the scene. And he was like, well, if you're doing this, you're an idiot. If you're doing this, you're an idiot. And so, he's like, suddenly I'm hearing everybody get called an idiot. But it made sense for Mark because of how he was preaching, who he was, and how he was gifted.
Right.
But it doesn't make sense for, say, you, who I've known you for a short while, but I've never heard you call anybody an idiot. And if you were suddenly like, you're a moron, and here's 5 reasons why, I'd be like, this doesn't seem in character for Will.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so...
Yeah, I think a lot of it, like you're saying, is being true to who you are.
Yeah, or who God's made you to be.
Exactly.
And letting him use that.
Exactly. That's a good way to... I should preface that with who God has made you to be and the giftings that he has placed in you, and not trying to... Even though you may look up to somebody and admire someone, you may not want to... take on the same style of leadership that they do, because that might not be true to the giftings that you have been gifted with.
And it works for their congregation, but it might not be what your congregation needs.
Sure.
Like, to go again with the Driscoll example, just why not? Like, his church had a lot of younger people, so doing those Q&As where it was, let's address sex matters frankly, that made sense for that. I grew up in Calvary, and now it has a more young adult population, but it had more older population. And while I never preached on a Sunday morning, if I were to just be like, all right, we're going to talk about sex and do that would not fit for that congregation.
For sure.
It wouldn't be appropriate. It wouldn't work. And I don't think God would be like, yeah, Chris, you got this. It might be more of a, you're trying to force this in kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's okay.
So the next two questions. What are some of the ways you see the Lord at work in Canada and even the US? We've talked about a lot, and it's important too, about areas of struggle, areas of where we could grow. But where's somewhere we see it working? Because it's very easy to just get focused on negative. Not that that's what we're doing. But yeah.
Yeah, I would say the ways that I've seen God at work in Canada specifically, and even maybe compared to the US a little bit different. I feel like Canada as a nation, because it's so multicultural and diverse, has a very good missions and outreach perspective. I've always felt like that, and that's one thing I feel like Canada just does absolutely phenomenally. Like awesome. they I feel like and this could be tied to just the way the nation is formed, but because so many various people come from various different backgrounds, I think inevitably they have a heart to go back and to spread the good news back to where maybe they would have originated from, or maybe they've had friends and family members or pastors come through their hometown or home country. And so outreach and missions, as far as I'm concerned, I feel like the church has done in Canada amazing at trying to spread the gospel to the ends of the earth, spread the gospel to various different nations, and funding and supporting full-time missionaries to go and to spread the good news and to proclaim the good news. Because, I just think about the nation in general. Like, we're so fortunate to live in a free land. And, just the country that we live in is so peaceful. It's safe. It's, I'm making broad stroke statements, like generalizations. But in general, it's a very safe country. It's a very peaceful country.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's definitely one of the ways that I've seen God at work, especially in Canada, is through missions.
Awesome, man. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. So, are there any particular resources, pastors, authors, musicians, anyone that you learn from that you'd like to share?
Yeah. Like I was saying, reading is something that has always been a struggle for me. I've always been like an active person, so sitting down and actually reading has been tough, but it's something that I've been growing into. Some of the resources and some of the pastors that I like. I love Francis Chan.
Ah, yes, Chan, the man.
Yeah, I love
giving your high five.
Yeah, I love Francis Chan. David Platt, he's great.
D. Platt.
Yeah, I just like C.S. Lewis is an incredible author.
I've noticed that Clive's is a staple. I'm sorry.
Yeah, C.S. Lewis, A.W. Tozer,
A-dubs.
Yeah, just a lot of different various resources. And one of the things that I've been doing lately is listening to a lot of podcasts and listening to a lot of different sermons online, because I find it's easier for me to just sit and listen and not have to actually take the time to read it through. I can just sit and listen and kind of hear what has to be said, and it's easier for me to process because as they're speaking and talking, I'm able to go, oh yeah, that's interesting, and then I can pause it and I can reflect on it or write something down if something strikes me. So yeah, I've really been finding like audiobooks, podcasts.
Sorry.
Shameless plug. Yeah. Have been just super helpful. So yeah, those are the resources that I've been using.
Awesome, man.
And then obviously I use Logos. So I use like commentaries, especially when I'm preparing for a sermon. We'll use like commentaries or look at the original languages and try to gain some insight that way.
Awesome, man.
Yeah.
All right, so final question, and it is inspired by the Christmas tree right behind you. And this was not planned, so I'm putting you on the spot. What is or are some of, we'll say some of, because it's hard to narrow it down to one.
Okay.
But what are some of your favorite Christmas movies or Christmas specials?
Okay. Oh, this is tough. Yeah, it's a good thing you clarified and said one of, because I think there's a little bit too many to choose just one.
Yeah.
I think nostalgia wise, probably Home Alone.
Oh man, I love Home Alone 1, but Home Alone 2 is so much better.
I think there's
sorry.
I think there's 3 of them, isn't there?
Oh, there's been like 5.
Oh,
like
has there?
Three. The third got released in theaters.
Okay.
And it was about a completely unrelated family.
Okay.
And then there was 4, which was made for TV, and it was supposed to be the McAllisters again.
Okay.
But it wasn't Macaulay Culkin, because at that point he was like probably 15.
Okay.
And then you've got a home invasion story, and it's not cute or funny anymore.
Oh, okay.
So it was a little kid, supposed to be Kevin, a different dad. None of the original cast came back. Dad had a new wife, and it was legit a new character. And then it was Marv and not Harry, and it was Marv played by French Stewart, and it was a mess. And then there was a 5th one that just came out like 2-3 years ago that I have no idea what it's about. I just saw a spot on YouTube. I'm like, wow, they're still trying.
Huh.
All right.
Yeah, I think so. Home Alone's got to be up there.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, we watched one with what is it called? I think it's called Jingle All the Way.
Oh yes.
With Schwarzenegger.
Oh man, yes.
That one is so funny. I think that's
Turbo Time.
Yeah, I think that one's hilarious. That one's up there.
So good.
I think National Lampoon's Family Christmas is a classic.
Yeah.
And I think probably one of the newer classics, but Elf. Yeah, I think
that one gets a lot of love.
Yeah, I think I like Elf with Will Ferrell. That was a really good Christmas movie.
I did not that I think it's bad or anything. It's just I guess I saw it too late or something.
Yeah,
just like I don't love it like all y'all love it, but right on, cool.
I think it's one of those. I may be making just a random statement, but Elf is like one of those polarizing ones. Either you love it or you don't really love it. Like, it's just kind of like there's no in between.
I haven't encountered anybody who just like hates it though.
Yeah, it's true. Either it's not for you or it's for you.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Awesome. All right. Well, Will, thank you for joining us again.
Thanks for having me.
No problem. We'll get you back a third time, but then we'll have a whole new set of questions.
Cool.
We'll get you back. And then, dear listener, I hope you enjoyed listening to and watching today's episode of One Cross Radio. And I gotta go let Luna in. You've been hearing her scratch at the door for like the past 5 minutes, so she's getting a bit antsy. Will, final thoughts? Just to put you on the spot again?
No, it was just great to take the time to do this, and
awesome.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Sweet. All right, that's a good final thought. I'm happy to hear that. All right, well, thank you again for joining us, and dear listener, hope you enjoyed, and of course, dear viewer, hope you enjoyed us making random faces and laughing, and the backdrop of my home. Word. On that note, hope you all have a great day, and God bless. Take care.